How do you make a hit movie? Well, that's easy. Just get a bankable movie star, Nicolas Cage for example, in the lead role, bring in some demonic animatronics, and promise that the two are going to beat the absolute snot out of each other for 90 minutes, and you're pretty much guaranteed to break the box office. Or so you would think. In 2021, Willy's Wonderland delivered on this premise in brutal fashion. The film stars Nicolas Cage as a lone drifter who is tricked into being a human sacrifice when he agrees to clean the abandoned Willy's Wonderland Entertainment Center in exchange for his car being fixed by the local townspeople. Unbeknownst to him, however, the center is inhabited by a group of animatronics that are possessed by a murderous cult with one intention: to chow down on any unlucky soul who walks through the doors. What follows is an 80s horror-inspired, neon-baked, blood-soaked hour and a half of carnage, as Cage punches, tears, and beats his way through the fuzzy robots, whilst also smashing the high score on a pinball arcade game. Yes, this movie is as random and unhinged as you're imagining. And yet, despite this, the movie grossed a measly $450,000 at the worldwide box office, compared to a $5 million budget, and received mixed reviews across the board, with the overall consensus praising the performance of Cage and the animatronics, but panning the overall plot and the rest of the characters featured throughout the film. But there's one aspect of the film that has yet to receive its due praise, and that is how the filmmakers have created a story which so perfectly replicates the experience of playing an arcade game, which is exactly what we're going to be talking about in this video: the Gameified Brilliance of Willy's Wonderland. And of course, we will be discussing potential spoilers, so go and watch the movie if you haven't already before you continue with this video. Now, since this movie's release, if you mention its title to basically any movie fan, you're likely to get the response of, "Oh, that one with Nick Cage fighting robots." Which, I mean, yeah, pretty much. But there's another response which is just as likely, and we'd be remiss for not discussing it in this video, and that's, "Oh yeah, that Five Nights at Freddy's ripoff." Whilst the writer of the film, Geo Parsons, and the director, Kevin Lewis, have both denied any connection between their film and the FNAF franchise, claiming that they developed the idea from a short film project back in 2016, it's hard to watch the film without noting the abundance of similarities between the two properties. The most obvious is, of course, the antagonists, both of which are animatronics originally designed to be entertainment for children that have now adopted murderous tendencies. There are also similarities in the plots, such as the goal of surviving a night trapped in the lair of the aforementioned creatures, and the revelations of what exactly is driving the actions of the enemies. But the biggest link between the two projects that stood out to me whilst watching was the fact that FNAF is a gaming franchise, whilst Willy's Wonderland feels like it should be an adaptation of either an arcade or a video game. And, full disclosure, this video was almost titled "Why Willy's Wonderland is the perfect FNAF adaptation," because it could be considered to be exactly that. By far the greatest accomplishment of the film is how it emulates the feeling of playing an arcade game, taking the audience on a ride that feels like a love letter to the summer days of the 80s and 90s, spent blasting your way through your favourite shooter or horror. However, forcing this film to stand in the shadow of the FNAF IP would be doing Willy's Wonderland a disservice, because, while there are similarities from the get-go, the film carves out its own blood-soaked spot within horror movie history, and has more than earned the right to stand on its own merits. So, how exactly does this film emulate the experience of playing a game? Let's start with Nicolas Cage's character, dubbed the Janitor in the credits of the film. From start to finish, Cage utters not a single word in his performance. The only sounds we ever hear from him being the occasional grunt or scream whilst in battle with an animatronic. Interestingly, this choice was actually that of Cage himself, who stated that he and the director decided to remove the already sparse dialogue for his character because "I thought that would be a fun acting challenge to see how much I could communicate without words and only with movement and facial expressions." Which is just the most Nick Cage thing I've ever heard. The result of this choice is a performance which brings to mind the multitude of video game protagonists who remain silent for the duration of their journeys. Think Link from The Legend of Zelda, Isaac Clarke in the original Dead Space, and the Doomslayer from Doom, to name a few. Usually, this choice serves to heighten and spotlight the absurdity of the chaos happening around them, whilst also allowing the heroes to communicate their character through their actions and choices, rather than extended dialogue or cheesy one-liners. We see the same thing in action with the janitor, who prefers to simply act and move himself forward rather than waste his time and breath communicating with those around him. Additionally, the silence of his character allows the audience to draw their own conclusions about him and his past. As is the case in gaming, this allows the audience member, or the player in this analogy, to achieve a higher level of immersion, making it feel like they are the character and the events are actually happening to them, thereby creating a deeper engagement and personal connection than would be achieved if we were simply told what to think and what to feel. Cage's role as the janitor is definitely the main talking point of the film, but he's not the only character in the story that contributes to the gamification of this movie. Willy's Wonderland also features a group of teenagers, led by Emily Toster's Liv Hawthorne, who are intent on burning down the entertainment centre to rid the town of its curse, as well as various townsfolk, most notably Beth Grant as Sheriff Lund and Rick Wright as Tex McAdoo, who have made a deal with Willy and his ragtag group of animatronics to regularly feed them with human sacrifices in exchange for the inhabitants of the town itself to be left to live in peace. The story itself is fairly unoriginal in this premise. A demonic presence haunts a location, the inhabitants struggle to deal with it, a new protagonist must come in and save the day, etc, etc. But it's the janitor's reaction to the revelation of this backstory that is the most interesting component. In that, he has no reaction. He barely bats an eyelid as the sheriff divulges the grisly past of the town, completely unfazed by the information that the animatronics before him are actually inhabited by the vengeful spirits of murderers. This reaction brings to mind a player's reaction to the backstory of whatever 80s arcade game they were about to dive into. The story was simple and the task ahead of them clear, but this all took a backseat to the action that they were waiting to jump into. Demonic entities that want to eat me alive, you say? Sure, as long as I get the chance to bash their heads in with whatever weapon is at my disposal. The plot doesn't need to be spectacular, as long as the ride is action-packed and thrilling. The rest of the characters within the film act as the non-playable characters, or NPCs of the story, making ridiculous choices that put them either in constant imminent danger that the janitor must save them from, or allow them to act as cannon fodder, so that we may enjoy the carnage of their deaths without losing our main character. Their scenes essentially act as the cutscenes of the story, revealing some sort of exposition or furthering the development of the position of the antagonists before we return to our playable character of the janitor, ready to once again wreak havoc on our enemies. Another frequently debated aspect of the film is the contents of the drink that the janitor is seen downing throughout the story. The label is seen to read, "Punch, a fistful of caffeine to your kisser." Whilst the contents and, more importantly, the point of the drink is never explicitly revealed, it could be theorized that these cans fit into the gamified aspects of the movie by acting as the power-ups for the main character. The main points in which we see Cage drinking these occur during the breaks he takes from his cleaning duties, normally shortly after battling and dismembering yet another animatronic enemy. We see him sluggish and tired in these moments before being quickly restored back to full energy and vigor once he's downed a punch drink, ready to punch another enemy. Was that one a bit too on the nose? Frequently in video games, players close to death after fighting an enemy will have to find a power-up to restore their health bar before they can jump back into the fray once more. These drinks could simply be energy drinks designed to keep the janitor up for the duration of his night shift of cleaning, or they could be the secret weapon coursing through his veins that allows him to dispatch enemy after enemy with bloody ease. Nicolas Cage himself has refused to elaborate on the answer to the mystery of the drink, saying that he would prefer you as the audience member to imagine and surmise whatever you want to be in that can. That is a far better answer and reason for the can than anything I could tell you. I want your opinion as to what was in the can, because that was the right opinion. Above all else, one of the greatest achievements of Willy's Wonderland is how open the story is to interpretation. You could view the movie as a simple horror comedy, designed to be nothing more and nothing less than a vehicle for the director and writer to explore a genre they enjoy and for Nicolas Cage to test his acting chops in a new and exciting way. Or you could see it as a love letter to the horror B-movies of the 80s, where excessive gore, two-dimensional plot points, and copious amounts of neon reigned supreme. Or, like me, you could interpret it as one of the greatest arcade game adaptations we've ever seen in cinema. From the seemingly invincible protagonist who tears through enemies with ease for the audience's entertainment, to the NPCs who offer themselves up as cannon fodder, Willy's Wonderland perfectly captures the absurdity and brilliance of the horror arcade games you know and love. Ones where you'd put a coin into the machine, pick up a plastic gun attached by a thick wire, and fully adopt the motto of shoot first, ask questions later. At the very least, the film delivers perfectly on the advertised premise. This movie will feature Nicolas Cage beating up demonic animatronics. And really, if you were expecting any more than that, you should probably watch a different movie. But what do you think? Do you agree with my thoughts on the film? Do you have another horror film that you would like to hear my thoughts on? Let me know in the comments below. Also, leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to the channel for a brand new video every single week. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.